also have on board Laura Henney, who is our NPPR board chair with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. And she is the one who's assisting with the slide set. For today's presentations, we have Donna Walden, who will be a moderator of our presentation session. She's with Green Up and the Nevada Green Business Network. And I want to give a shout out to Green Up because they are co-sponsoring this webinar. And because of that, we're allowed to do it free for everyone. So thank you, Donna and Green Up, for being a co-sponsor.
Was working and I just switched it back.
Then we also have two presentations that'll be given by Julianne Rhodes with Environmental Innovations California Green Business Network on stormwater permitting and compliance. And then Cassie Carroll with the Illinois Green Business Association and the Green Business Engagement National Network, who'll be talking about stormwater pollution best practices for all business types. Then we'll have a panel session where we'll introduce questions, and then we'll wrap up and adjourn for the day. Okay, Laura?
Thanks, Lisa. I'm just curious, do you just see the agenda slide or do you see the next slide box as well?
I see the agenda slide.
Okay, good. It's working great. Thanks. My name is Laura Henney. I'm the chair of the National Pollution Roundtable. I have a little slide here.
Okay, let me go ahead.
Did you do this one? Sorry,
yeah,
I missed that one.
That's okay. So just to let everybody know, today's session is being recorded and it'll be available on NPPR's website. Everybody has been muted and we will take questions through the Q&A button. And there'll be an opportunity for you to provide feedback at the end of the meeting and thoughts on future webinar topics with a brief survey that will pop up at the end of the meeting. Okay, Laura.
Here we go. Now it's me. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who is attending today's webinar. I want to give a special thank you to Donna Walden and Green Up for generously sponsoring the webinar to make it available to all of you at no cost. Generally, the P2U is for members only, and we have a $20 fee for non-members attending these webinars. So thank you to Donna and Green Up for that. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to the P2U committee for making all of this possible. NPPR is our national cohesive voice for P2. So this is the only national organization for pollution prevention, and we offer our members many different things, including some of the items mentioned here. We have different work groups. We have a bi-monthly newsletter that just went out this week. We offer National Pollution Prevention Week activities, including this poster. This is one from a few years ago, which was generously sponsored by Washington Ecology. And we have MVP2 awards during Pollution Prevention Week, which is the third full week in September. And we have these P2Us, and we offer other things, including this year, we were hoping to do an in-person conference, but with situation as it is, we're going to just go ahead and do a virtual conference. So we are currently in the planning stages for a fall virtual conference. If you're interested in helping out to plan this conference, please send out an email to admin@p2.org. Michelle is our admin, and we're just starting the preparation, so this would be a perfect time for you to get in on that. So now I'm going to go into the presentations.
Okay.
Am I continuing with this?
Now, let me see now if I can share. I have Donna's slides, and I'm going to attempt to share them.
Or did Donna want to do her own slides?
She had sent them to me. Donna, I'm not going to be able to pull up your slides.
Okay, I'll give it a try.
Oops.
I'm just virtual, so things aren't quite working the way they should be remotely. but let me just see if I can get them up. I'll share my screen and then let me know. Let me go
Yes,
into
we're
slide.
seeing them.
Okay, you're seeing my screen, the correct screen?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you everybody for being here today. We're really happy to do this webinar on best practices for stormwater pollution prevention. I'm Donna Walden, president of GreenUp and director for the Nevada Green Business Network. All three of our speakers today run or help run green business programs for their respective states. Julianne, Cassie, and I are also working on a grant together, and this was one of our commitments to do a webinar on best practices to reduce pollutants from entering stormwater, wastewater, and to encourage businesses to do these pollution reducing practices. So let me begin by introducing our presenters. Julianne Rhodes has worked in both the public and private sectors, developing specifications for on-site regulatory compliance of projects involving the assessment and removal of hazardous materials. Her background in environmental issues and technology led her to be the Director of Technology of Environmental Outcomes for the California Green Business Network. And I'm assuming you're going to hear a little bit about Cabin later. Cassie Carroll serves as a marketing and outreach program director at the Smart Energy Design Assistance Center, known as CDAC, at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Cassie is co-founder of the Illinois Green Business Association, and she also leads the Green Business Engagement National Network, fondly known as GBEN, a consortium of green business programs across the US. So I'm going to speak a few minutes about the Nevada Green Business Program. Like I said before, three of our speakers today help run green business programs for their states, and stormwater management is one of the many P2 practices that we support. But it's a very important topic, and there's a lot to say about it. So that's why we decided to do a webinar today. In Nevada, we operate a green business network very similar to the way California does. We license both the software and the methodology for running a green business program from California. Here are a few details of our program. We work mainly with small to medium businesses. We educate and assist businesses on sustainable best practices, and we help them achieve their environmental standards that we've agreed upon as a network. We're also able, you're going to hear a little bit about Green Biz Tracker, but we're able to measure their collective impacts and estimated cost savings. And we can measure things such as greenhouse gas reduction, energy savings, water savings, reduction in solid and hazardous waste, and cost savings. And then what we do is we spend a lot of time recognizing their efforts and promoting them as Nevada green businesses and eco-conscious organizations. So these, I have on the slide logos of our partners in the network. So GreenUp partnered with Western Nevada College in 2018 to secure federal funding to launch a green business program for the state and to build a database to collect environmental outcome measures. Today, we are joined by several partners who are known independently for their sustainability work across the state and their commitment to sustainability. Some of the partners have assigned green business advisors that help, along with GreenUp and Western Nevada College. Businesses go through the certification process, and all of our partners help us by giving us visibility and reach across the state. So thank you again for being here today. Here's my contact information, and next up is Julianne Rhodes from Environmental Innovations in the California Green Business Network. She'll be speaking on stormwater permitting and compliance.
Thank you, Donna. I'm just going to share my screen now. Does everyone see the main screen?
Yes,
Thank you.
and you can put it in
See.
slideshow.
Yeah, it's not in slideshow. It's
Oh,
we're seeing your
there we go.
background too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. My name is Julianne Rhodes, and I've been involved in environmental program management for over 30 years. I currently serve as Director of Environmental Programs at EI and on the Water Commission in my hometown of Santa Cruz, California. I'd like to start by introducing Environmental Innovations. We're a woman-owned certified B Corp that serves businesses and governments and nonprofits throughout California and beyond, and we're based in the Monterey Bay area. Our services include those that you see on the slide, but our foundation was really built on pollution prevention. And in addition to current projects supporting stormwater permit compliance, we also coordinate the statewide California Green Business Network, which consists of 52 business assistance and certification programs in cities and counties around the state. For those of you who may not be familiar with the origins of the stormwater program, I just want to provide a little context. So an NPDES, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, regulates discharges to receiving waters such as oceans, rivers, lakes, and bays. In 1987, a Clean Water Act amendment prohibited non-stormwater discharges to storm drains and required that owners and operators of storm drain systems secure an NPDES permit. So if you discharge pollutants from a point source, like an outfall, to water of the United States, you need an NPDES permit. In the case of a city or county, that point source includes the stormwater conveyance system that collects stormwater runoff from streets and carries it to creeks and rivers and the ocean. Today, I'd like to cover the impacts of stormwater pollution, review some of the BMPs for preventing that pollution, and then leave you with some resources to aid your future stormwater pollution prevention endeavors. And then I'll hand the presentation off to Cassie Carroll, who will talk about specific sector-specific stormwater pollution prevention. So what are common sources of pollution in stormwater? These types of pollutants can come from businesses, public streets, and residential areas. The challenge of mitigating stormwater pollution comes from both the many types of pollutants and the wide range of sources. Our streets are particularly dirty. Brake pads contain copper, which wears off with use and contributes to stormwater pollution. And grease and oil are transported to surface waters in stormwater runoff from runways, roadways, and parking lots. Other pollution sources include runoff from construction sites and land where metal-containing sludge, fertilizers, and pesticides have been applied. One major source is concrete repair, which goes on all the time, can produce high alkaline wastewater with a pH of above 12. So the impacts of stormwater pollution include risks to public health and degradation of waterways. The economic impacts are essentially the costs associated with managing the public health risks and the degradation of the waterways. So now that we've identified the threats to stormwater, what are some solutions that have been found to mitigate pollution on a program-wide scale? Again, the difficulty with stormwater is it sort of comes from everywhere. So it's hard to, unlike point source pollution coming from a factory, it's hard to treat before it reaches our waterways. So there are many approaches, but these BMPs can be implemented by businesses at their facilities. They include integrated pest management, careful mobile cleaning, and implementation of low-impact development structures, which retain the water on site, and the protection of storm drains at all times. So when those maintenance activities are occurring out in the world, that the storm drains are always considered and protected. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about integrated pest management because chemical pesticides tend to be over applied and they can persist in the environment for quite a while, and they kill or affect aquatic life. So effective IPM programs take an holistic approach and identify the life cycle and interactions of a pest with its environment. And just sort of knowing that seeing a bug is not necessarily a problem that calls for action, as 90% of the insect world is beneficial. IPM considers all available pest control methods, and a pest management plan is developed. And the plan attempts to use the most economical means with the least possible hazard to people, property, and the environment. So that would include things like finding sort of physical barriers and things like that, as opposed to always reaching for the chemicals. An IP management plan assesses the severity of the situation. Is it tolerable? Is it temporary? Did we welcome the problem? Cockroaches, ants, fleas, rodents, all love food, water, and shelter. So identifying how to remove the attraction without using chemicals is the aim of the management plan. So always contract. So what businesses can do is always contract with a landscaper or be a landscaper who follows IPM practices. And so the management plan will attempt to obviate the need for pesticides. But if chemicals must be used, then these BMPs should be implemented. And if you do contract with an IPM professional, then this would all sort of be in writing and part of the plan. But the main thing is to focus, just target the problem, choose less toxic options, avoid broad spectrum because that's just going to kill everything. Try and again, that goes back to targeting the problem. And look for EPA signal words like caution, warning, danger, and try and choose the less toxic options and organic wherever possible. And only spray outdoors after sunset. Sometimes direct sunlight can change the way the chemicals work and it harms the plants. And remember, this one is really important and is sort of a big focus of IPM, which is remember the life stage of the pest. Some chemicals are designed to work when the pest is in the egg stage or the larval stage or the adult stage. If you apply something that isn't directed at the correct life stage, then it's not going to be effective at all, and you've just added chemicals to the environment for no reason. And if those BMPs are followed, the volume of chemicals used can be greatly reduced, which is the aim. So pressure washers are another area where making sure that they understand how their actions affect stormwater or runoff that goes into storm drains is really, really important. Pressure washers can create a high volume of contaminated runoff. So it's important to contract with pressure washers and mobile cleaners. So maybe people who are doing mobile car washing, that kind of thing, who know how to keep contaminated water out of storm drains. So there's a BMP fact sheet and a video that you can use to help educate mobile cleaners that I'll share with you at the end of the presentation. And businesses, property managers, and others should require in writing that the washers follow these BMPs. wait. So my favorite BMP is the low impact development. So these are structures that use plants and soil to capture and filter stormwater runoff, and allows clean water to recharge groundwater supplies. So it retains the water on site and sinks it, and lets sort of the ground do the filtering. It's a little sort of treatment that mimics natural processes in nature. And so managing stormwater in this way is called low impact development, LID. And these development practices reduce stormwater runoff by keeping it on site via small scale stormwater technologies that sort of mimic the way rainfall distributes in nature. One example of an LID practice is this rain garden that you see here, which helps slow, capture, and filter and infiltrate the water that runs off the impervious surfaces. So the design of the garden maximizes infiltration and retention. And then obviously it's placed in an area where the water will flow to it and sink it. So these websites here provide detailed guidance. This in California, there's a green building ordinance that encompasses model water efficient landscape ordinance that includes detailed instructions on how to design and build LIDs. And it's very useful. One thing I do want to say while we're on this slide is if you look at the image below, it looks to me like the water is flowing down the sidewalk and is not going to go into this curb cut. This is an LID called a curb cut. And this happens a lot where somehow between design and implementation, people don't install these things always correctly. And so unless this water is going to take a right turn in here, I think maybe they didn't get this one quite right. So that's just something to bear in mind, that if you do ever work on a project where they're installing these, you really need to make sure the contractor knows what they're for. I find that happens a lot where they don't really see the difference between cutting the curb here or there because they weren't in on the process of what these things are actually meant to do. So anyway, just a little side note there. Like I said, this is the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance gives a lot of guidance and detail about how to do those. And then the UC Davis IPM is really great because you can just type in something like aphids and then it gives you a ton of resources about how to manage that. And when I say ton, I mean like 6,000 or something like that. So you can kind of refine the filters to boil it down a little bit more, but it gives quite a lot of information about how to maybe remove aphids from a specific plant and that. So you can type in either the pest or the plant or both and get some detailed information about how to handle that. And that could be useful when you're working with your IPM contractor. And then this mbamobilecleaners.org is a site that I maintain. I keep it up because it's handy to show pressure washers when you're out in the field. It's nice to be able, you can bring it up on your phone, that kind of thing. And just, it has that BMP list on it of everything that they need to follow, which includes like dry sweeping first and using absorbent stuff for greasy things instead of just trying to hose them down, all that kind of stuff. Don't use soap unless you have to. Usually just water and pressure is enough. They don't always need to use soap. So, so it goes through, lists all that stuff. And then it also has a 15-minute video that demonstrates people protecting the storm drain. And it shows you how to kind of direct water and either back it up into a barrel, or direct it toward landscaping if that's an option and the water's not too dirty, that kind of thing. So it covers quite a few different scenarios, hosing down buildings or whether it's roadways or parking lots, things like that. So it's worth watching or making sure that your pressure washers know all about the BMPs, and it demonstrates it, which is nice. Happy to field any questions now quickly or wait to the panel.
We'll wait to the panel, Julianne. Thank you.
All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Julianne. It's great to learn about those best management practices and how we can talk to maybe our buildings or businesses more about incorporating these types of best practices into our programs. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in my slide deck as well. So thank you so much for having me today. My name is Cassie Carroll. I'm the Marketing and Outreach Program Director at CDAC, Smart Energy Design Assistance Center. Started the Illinois Green Business Association back in 2008, and still I'm affiliated with that organization, and also run the Green Business Engagement National Network, which I'll talk about a little bit later today. So just a quick overview of what we do. CDAC, the Smart Energy Design Assistance Center at the University of Illinois, really our goal is to decrease the energy footprint of Illinois and beyond. But really we do a lot of diverse things. Our core is in energy efficiency, but we also work with to help buildings and businesses be more sustainable, provide climate action planning services, assist with workforce development and initiatives here in Illinois, and even do things with renewable energy. We do a lot of training and education, and really trying to help building managers and people connect with better, more sustainable practices and resources. So it fit nicely to partner with CDAC to bring the Illinois Green Business Program to the organization that the Illinois Green Business Association founded in 2008. And our program is really to help make it easier for businesses to go green. Businesses, as we know, have a lot of external and internal pressures and focuses that they need to deal with, where sometimes sustainability or pollution prevention can fall to the wayside. So we really try to be a resource hub, as many of you do on the call today, to make it easier for businesses to adopt these best practices. Through the Green Business Engagement National Network, we learn a lot from other green business programs nationwide and try to bring those best practices to Illinois and really trying to make sustainable business a standard practice here in Illinois. So the Illinois Green Business Program is a partnership between the organization that I work with and then the nonprofit, the Illinois Green Business Association. We have some great partners that we work with. It is not possible to run our statewide green business program without these partners. So the Cook County Department of Sustainability and Environment, Choose DuPage and DuPage County, the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center, and Take Up 25 these are a couple examples of partnerships that help us really do this work with businesses across the state. So, we talk a lot about how, state-based programs need that regional support and partnership to help businesses make change. So thank you to our partners that help make this possible. So our program our Green Business Program works across 3 different steps. We formed our program in 2008, but it has taken many iterations since then. But really, we help businesses first through a program called the Green Business Baseline. So it's an easy first step the businesses can take to actually kind of get their feet wet around sustainability. It's a short checklist, and then we provide different assessments to help a business not only identify those high impact things that they should focus on in their organizations, but also those easy, no to low cost opportunities to reduce resource use. And we really found that a low barrier entry to helping businesses get started is a great way to build a relationship and help them keep going. So then as they're working towards recognition or certification in our program, they can collect impact badges along the way. So if they want to focus on energy efficiency and reduce their energy use, they can work towards getting our energy badge, and that completes a section of our certification program. Or say they really want to reduce pollution and hazardous waste in their business, they can work in the pollution section and do that. And as they collect badges, they can reach our certification program. Sometimes businesses go straight to certification. Sometimes they start at the Green Biz baseline. But for us, our program is always trying to meet businesses where they are in their sustainability journey and support them along the way. As Donna mentioned, we use the system Green Biz Tracker. Green Biz Tracker is used by 8 states across the country to manage green business programs like mine. All of the data, all of the metrics. This is a snapshot of what it looks like if you logged into a business profile, and this is what a business sees. They get their checklist. You can have surveys. They can check their status. They have a public-facing profile once they're certified and pull impact reports for environmental outcomes and metrics. But the beauty of the system is it helps keep track of all these good things that the businesses are doing and their environmental impact. So this is a really quick snapshot of what one of those measures looks like that relates to pollution prevention. So this is a measure in our checklist that promotes EPA safer choice or similar standards that are safe for human health and the environment for your cleaning products. This business, we have a metric on the back end that based on how many square feet and some credible tools, we were able to calculate a metric that actually demonstrates the amount of hazardous materials reduced if they use a green certified cleaner, and one that particularly aligns with EPA's product and safer choice standards. So this business actually uploaded 3 different photos. Marvelosa actually is green EPA Safer Choice certified. You see simple green back there. So this is a practice and how Green Biz Tracker works. But once a business completes this measure, it can calculate an environmental outcome for us based on that input. Not all of our measures have metrics. Some of them need to be calculated outside of Green Biz Tracker, but it's been a really great tool to help us really calculate not only the environmental impacts of different sorts of green practices, but it also helps us really keep track of all that data and information for our program. So Green Biz Tracker has been an amazing tool. It was started by Julianne Rhodes' team at Environmental Innovations and the California Green Business Network, and we're lucky to be able to use it. So I'll talk about best management practices today, but how do we make recommendations? It's really some of our recommendations in our checklist are core measures. So IPM is actually a requirement of our program to make sure that all businesses follow IPM best practice standards, or they're elective, where businesses on this bottom one can request the pest control company manager apply pesticides as needed rather than on a regular schedule. That kind of goes to what Julianne was stating about talking about IPM and timing of applications. It's a great practice to do, but it might not be applicable by all businesses, or they might not have that relationship with their pest control company to make that recommendation. So we make that optional, but strongly encouraged for most of our businesses. Or we also do, these are required measures as well here on the right. But we promote stormwater best practices to businesses, and we require stormwater best practices like these, and then like ones we'll talk about in the latter half of my presentation here to businesses. So it's baked into our program that businesses think about the impacts of stormwater, outside of their business and on their property. So, why should businesses care? We talk a lot about not only minimizing the costs of doing businesses. If you're not applying pesticides or fertilizers on your lawn on a regular schedule, that does reduce costs as well as reduce stormwater impact. It increases employee safety for handling those types of things. I'm going down the line of hazardous materials and pesticides, but it can increase employee safety and reduction of safety incidents by handling those types of materials, may increase operational efficiency, and of course reduces pollutions within the communities that they reside in those waterways. So those are some of the selling points of why, why we ask businesses to do these things. And I do get questions in our certification program and on our standards from businesses. Well, why does this matter? Why should I do this? And these are some of the conversations we have to have, and along lines of what Julianne talked about today, around why businesses should care about stormwater, because to them, some of them, it's not their primary focus. They want to save money, they want to reduce costs, they want operational efficiency, but these aspects are really important to our green business programs as well, and something that all businesses should really consider as being part of a sustainable, or as being a sustainable business. So now I'm going to go into some best practices and things that we talk about with businesses in our program. So we're going to first talk about the basics. We're going to talk about dumpsters and hazardous holding material holding areas. We're going to talk about vehicles and outdoor equipment. We'll talk about lawn and garden areas, and we'll touch on some outdoor pool and spa best practices, as well as car wash areas. And then we'll go into some sector specific approaches. But I think the big theme about what we'll talk about today, there's two big themes that you'll see. One is making sure businesses have the right cleanup equipment in the right places. So often I see there is not a spill kit where it needs to be, or something that, even for restaurants, when we talk about grease handling, and the Pollution Prevention Resources Center, who's I know is on our call today, I see them in the chat, has some great resources that I'll highlight along those lines. But training employees, not only having those spill kits in place and those procedures, but also training employees, new employees, and regular training for existing employees are two really critical ways to keep your businesses and make sure that your businesses are on top of reducing stormwater pollution at their sites. And as I talk today, I'm going to highlight a lot of different practices, but if you have specific ideas or things that you promote to businesses, I would love to hear it. Let's share that with everybody. Either pop that in the chat or put it in the Q&A, because again, if you got best tips and practices based on what I'm talking about, this is an opportunity to share that information with everybody on our session today. So please feel free to chime in and share your insights as well. So again, we'll go into the basics first. So we talk to businesses a lot about first, do you have any storm drains and where are they? So making sure that your businesses know where your storm drains are, and even using labels like the examples on the right-hand side are a great way to make sure that businesses know where their storm drains are and can make sure to put the right practices in place to reduce pollution to stormwater in those specific areas. Regularly inspecting and cleaning outdoor areas and picking up litter and debris or cigarette butts. Those are some of the best ways to, and easiest ways to reduce stormwater pollution. So making sure you can invite a business to say, hey, who is going to, in your business once a week, maybe every 3 days, check the parking lots, check your sidewalks, check different areas of your building to make sure that there isn't that litter and debris, and that your outdoor areas aren't adding more pollution to our stormwater. So please make sure that's something that we kind of a basic that we talk to businesses about, is just that regularly inspect, clean, and outdoor areas and picking up that litter and debris. Keeping surfaces clean by sweeping or mopping rather than using water. That is a measure in our checklist that we promote to businesses. Just making sure that whatever's on those mats or those surfaces are not being discharged into the storm drain, but rather into a sanitary sewer, if at all possible. With outdoor sidewalks, we just really ask our businesses to sweep rather than pressure wash or mop, or, if they really, really need to get something off that sidewalk, don't pressure wash it. Don't dump a bunch of water on that sidewalk, because whatever is on that sidewalk is going to end up in the storm drain. So that's a really basic best practice that we talk to a lot about our businesses. And sometimes they don't realize that they could be polluting stormwater by just doing those practices, by keeping the front of their businesses clean or their parking lots clean for their customers. Encouraging businesses to clean their storm or sewer drain catch basins at least once a year is really important. Usually storm drains, at least here in our community, are managed by either our water or sewer utilities. But that's a really great best practice too, to make sure that those are clean, that stormwater can pass through those drains when needed. But keeping that debris away, going back to this second point here, and making sure that you're cleaning up your business will reduce that litter entering your storm drain. Also, storing hazardous materials indoors where possible, I think, is a really important best practice, especially for auto bodies. This photo on the right here is a photo of one of the auto body shops that we work with. And if they do have to store them outside, this is a best practice that it is in a covered area. It's as far away as possible from the storm drain. If you can see here, there's actually a berm or a concrete edge around this space to make sure that if there is a spill, it is contained. Then we did recommend that this business have secondary containment too underneath all of these drums to make sure that if there are any minor spills, they're easy to clean up and they don't even enter this area. But using fully enclosed covered containers on a paved surface if they're outdoors is the best practice. And again, secondary containment, that means placing something underneath these drums to make sure that that captures any spilled liquids before it even enters that paved surface is the best practice. So that was an improvement recommendation for this business that we work with. But I kind of wanted to show you an example of if you do need to store hazardous materials outside, we do recommend that. I also saw a business recently where they had their old oil container. It had secondary containment. It was on a paved surface outside, ready for their company to pick up, but it wasn't covered. So that reduces the amount of, if you do have a small spill, say on the lid, or it trails down a little bit on the side, it can enter the secondary containment, but if it rains, having that cover provides that extra barrier for reducing runoff and spills from from those areas. Again, spill kits handy around all possible pollution hazard areas, and then encouraging businesses to install natural water capture systems to filter and minimize stormwater runoff, like rain gardens, or those different sorts of LIBs. I think that was what Julianne mentioned. And she can put it in the chat to clarify, but putting those different sorts of stormwater systems can help drain stormwater into the earth and into our soil before it runs off and captures more pollutants along the way. For dumpsters and holding areas, of course, we focus on that a lot when we talk about the basics. So ensuring that dumpsters have tight fitting lids and leaks are fixed. So I put a really bad picture of a bad dumpster. And I know we have all seen these at businesses. If you work with businesses, you've seen this. It is not easy sometimes for a business to coordinate with their waste hauler to get new bins or get bins that are repaired. But working with your businesses to make sure that their dumpsters have tight fitting lids and those cracks or leaks are fixed are really important. We don't need any of that dumpster gunk going into our stormwater and going into our parking lots. Thank you, Julianne. Low impact developments. Instead of the B, I said, instead of the D, I said B. Thank you. So regularly cleaning litter and debris from these areas around businesses. I encourage businesses to do it daily. When you take out the trash, clean it up. Make sure that's a part of training and that your managers and owners are keeping on top of making sure that those dumpster areas are clean. I know it's hard for some businesses, especially if they rent. They're sharing dumpsters with a lot of different people. And some businesses might not have the same best practices as the businesses that you're working with. So then I would recommend, say, let's go, and I'm happy to help you talk to your management about this and encourage other businesses to do the same. Another good thing, making sure your dumpsters are big enough to keep lids closed. This is a nice overflowing dumpster, and I know we've all seen these too, but any sorts of, it's not tight fitting, any of that debris can wash out and not enter storm drains, but it can wash out, get onto properties, blow around, and then eventually potentially go down the storm drain. So just use big enough dumpsters to make sure then that you can keep lids closed and provide that enough trash and cigarette butt containers to reduce litter. I was working with a business that does a lot of shipping, and they are an alcohol distribution company. And they have truckers that are waiting for their deliveries while their trucks are being loaded that just kind of sit in their cabs. And sometimes it needs to be refrigerated and sometimes it doesn't. But they were finding that they just had a lot of their truck drivers just throwing stuff out the window. They don't want to get out of their trucks. They were just throwing stuff out in the window, and there was a lot of litter entering on their parking lots. So they had not only garbage cans closer to where those bays were, those truck bays were, but also a big dumpster, so that, and they informed their truckers and educated them, please drive to these dumpsters. There's garbage cans located here. Please don't dump in our parking lots. So providing enough trash and cigarette butt containers can really reduce that litter and reduce the amount of cleanup that your businesses and their employees have to do on their grounds. Again, reminder signs are always a good thing. So making sure that you have signage is also a really great opportunity, or reducing, having signage that guides employees on how to reduce the amount of pollutants entering the storm drains. That's a great best practice and a good reminder for staff. And then if you do have to rinse any sewer containers, drain that into the sanitary sewer if need be. And make sure that the trash compactors, if business does have a trash compactor, here's kind of an example of a trash compactor, and here's a storm drain that's labeled, actually, that's right next to a trash compactor. Make sure those trash compactors are connected to the sanitary sewer and not the storm sewer. Please make sure that they are really not entering that storm sewer, if at all possible. That's something that we don't have a lot of businesses that we work with that have the trash compactors. We have some, but that's a best practice that I really make sure to emphasize with those folks that do have trash compactors. We don't want any trash goo going into our sewer drains. All right, let's shift a little bit. Vehicles and outdoor equipment. Every business, or most businesses, or good percentage of businesses, I'd say, have some sort of vehicles, company-owned vehicles, or outdoor equipment that they use. So, one thing that we don't think about a lot when we're working with businesses is, where are they washing those cars? Are they filling their mowers or string trimmers in an area where a storm drain is located? So, we talk to businesses about fixing oil or other leaks in company vehicles and outdoor equipment to prevent spills. So, don't advise your businesses, please don't fill your outdoor equipment in an area where it is next to a storm drain. I know some people spill a little gas or a little diesel. That doesn't need to go down the storm drain. Make sure that you're in an area where that not only is not near a storm drain, but that it can be contained, and there's a spill kit available if those spills do happen. And that's why I say, clean up the spills. Don't just leave it there. We talk to businesses a lot about that. And also, when cars are being washed, making sure that that wash water is not entering the storm drains as well. If they are, there are some unique, there's some good berms and different things you can place around storm drains to actually reduce that commercial car wash water or that wash water from going into the storm drains. But we also recommend that folks use safer cleaning solutions for car and truck washing. So this bay down here is a picture of one of our auto body shops that we work with. They have a wash station here, and it goes into the sanitary sewer. But there's a lot of spillage into other areas. It might be going into other underground storage areas for their other hazardous fluids that they use, like their oil or antifreeze if they have spills. So we recommended that they have some sort of berm around this area to make sure that that water only goes in this certain area. And we recommended EPA's Safer Choice car cleaning solutions to use for their vehicles. Even though it's indoors, there's some good practices that they can take to reduce water or pollution entering the storm drains or other areas of their business. We also, a little off topic, asked them to use a high pressure, low volume spray nozzle for this area as well. They were using something that was low flow. But yeah, you don't always think about vehicles and outdoor equipment, but that's something that folks should definitely think about when going to a business and helping a business reduce stormwater pollution. Lawn and garden areas. Julianne really spoke about some great best practices around IPM and the use of fertilizers and outdoor pesticides. So I won't repeat a lot of that, but I'll just share some different best practices that we talk to our businesses about. So developing a policy that states that businesses will only use fertilizers and pesticides when needed. That measure that I showcased earlier around working with their pest control companies at an as needed basis rather than a regular schedule. And I actually have a lot of businesses that take that on, that ask their ask their pest company, do you use IPM practices? What is our schedule? And do we need this schedule all the time? Can we do it on an as needed basis rather than a regular schedule? And we get that in writing from those pest companies, pest control companies that our businesses work with. So we do have a lot of businesses that take this best practice on and make sure that they're using IPM best practices on their landscapes and inside their buildings. Requesting a pest control and then using organic fertilizers. The OMRI label is one that I refer to a lot, and working with your landscaping companies to make sure that that is what they use. Making sure that you're also using mulch and compost in garden areas or planting areas rather than fertilizers. This is going to be generally be regional on this practice. In Illinois, we say at least locally sourced mulch 3 inches deep, but that also helps with reduced watering, which is also a benefit. But that is something that we talk about a lot with our businesses. Another thing that I didn't put in here is that we also talk to our businesses about making sure that if they have irrigation, that they're not actually, that they check that system regularly and they're not overwatering, and especially after fertilizers and other outdoor pesticides have been used. So that's another place where runoff can happen and those sorts of things can enter into our storm drains. This is an example for lawn and garden areas, IPM tactics for ants. I know it's ant season here in Illinois right now. All the ants are coming out and we're finding out where they got in last time, and they make an appearance. But you know, things like first thinking about vacuuming, wet cleaning, pest proof areas and pest proofing, like caulking holes, fixing leaks, and cleaning up ant trails. And then you go into biological. Can you do something outdoors rather than going to chemicals? So this is just an example of what Julianne was talking about in terms of timing, approaches, different strategies. But IPM, we should think about these things first and recommend these types of best practices to our businesses. Like, do you have good weather sealing around your warehouse doors that prevent pests from entering your buildings? Have you caulked those holes? Have you put different sorts of or done things to pest proof your facility? And then what can be done biologically or chemically? And you can work with your pest control companies to determine these different strategies as well. In vehicle washing areas, going back to that here really quickly, I just wanted to say that, you can block those storm drains. So here's an example of it entering the storm drains and then it enters your waterways. You can put, and I think I have a slide that showcases the little device that you can put, around those storm drains to actually prevent that wash water from entering those. You could direct wash water into grassy areas and recommend your businesses do that. If vehicle washing is common, I think really recommending that they use a commercial car wash is the best practice. Since they have that filtration capability, they make sure that that water is not entering the storm drain. A commercial car wash is going to ensure that that water is going into the sewer system or being filtered before it enters our sewer system. So that's a really great best practice. But if they still want to wash vehicles on their properties, providing training about how to prevent that wash water from going into storm drains is a really important best practice. Also, using biodegradable or phosphate-free soaps is another great recommendation. Avoiding detergents, sometimes even using those high-pressure nozzles, which you can see an example of here on the right, reduces the need for soaps. It actually helps reduce the amount of spotting on cars if you use things that are biodegradable or phosphate-free and use those high-pressure nozzles. So if you've ever been in a car wash yourself personally, and you see you still have those flecks or spots on your car, and you've used the kind of soft wash rather than the pressure wash, that might be a symptom of not using high pressure nozzles, and it actually reduces the need for soaps. And of course, using credible third-party wash certified cleaning solutions. So here's some really great logos to look for. And of course, EPA Pollution Prevention Program provides different sorts of standards and best practices for more sustainable and pollution reducing solutions. So please check their website. I know that that tool is still available online, so please check their website for more details and guidance. Outdoor pool and spa areas. We get questions from businesses sometimes along these lines, but here's just some best practices. We do not discharge pool water directly into the storm drain. You have to allow the chlorine levels to degrade actually and neutralize before even discharging that water into the sewer system. So, you know, if your businesses have a storm drain nearby and that's how they drain their pools every year, please tell them that's a no-no, and they have to take some best practices to be able to discharge that water properly into the sewer system so that that water can go to the wastewater treatment plants and get treated properly. Saltwater pools particularly have more bromine in them and can add more pollution to our waterways than chlorine pools. And thinking about ways to use alternatives to copper or silver-based algicides. Algicides reduce the amount of algae and greenness in a pool, but copper can actually pollute aquatic life and really harm our aquatic life. Silver-based algicides are really caustic. So there's asking asking what a business uses to reduce algae for outdoor pools, I think is a really smart pollution prevention best practice. And they can work with their pool management company to resolve algae problems without the use of copper. There's polymer algicides that are kind of, they work a little bit slower, but they are less polluting than something that's copper or silver based. Also, just maintaining good pool pH and water hardness can reduce copper pipe erosion, which could enter waterways, and that copper, again, pollutes aquatic life. And we talk about, too, if pools are cleaning their filtration systems, we'd say never clean that filter in the street, gutter, or storm drain. Rinse the filters on a dirt area and spade that filter residue into the soil and send that old filter to the trash. So that's a big piece, a big recommendation that we provide when pools are making sure that their filters are clean. And then sometimes pools need to be backwashed a little bit through that filtration system to clean out any debris and gunk. Make sure that that filter backwash discharge doesn't go into the street or the storm drain and enters either landscape areas or a sewer system. So there's a lot with pools that we can work with our businesses as well to make sure that there are really good practices that reduce stormwater pollution from that either chlorinated or saltwater pool. All right. I am going to go into a little bit about sector-based water pollution prevention approaches. So when we work with restaurants and food businesses, I commonly see this picture when I visit a business on the left or on the right. There's a nice dumpster with lid, maybe not tight fitting, but a good lid, no leaks. But look at that grease container. There is definitely some cleanup that's needed. That is one of the things that we help this business with. But it's so important to train your businesses on how to manage their outdoor grease or use cooking oil storage in containers. Fats, oils, and grease or fogs are important for both our storm drains and our sanitary drains, particularly our sanitary drains. And again, the Pollution Prevention Resources Center has some really amazing, and the Western States Alliance has some really amazing training tools and training opportunities around managing fats, oils, and grease in restaurants. So I'm not going to go into that today, but I'm going to talk about what happens outside of the dumpsters. Storing used oil and grease in watertight, leak-proof, and labeled containers with tight fitting lids is important. And you have to regularly inspect these for leaks. This to me looks like spills from restaurants actually. You can see it on the lid here. Actually dumping grease and not doing it properly or not cleaning up spills afterwards. So making sure that you have a training program for your staff on how to clean up those spills is really important. Making sure you close the lid tightly and bringing a rag to the bin to clean up these spills, whether they be on the top of the container or on the side of the container, are really important as well. And then if you can store that container in a covered area, that is preferred as well to reduce greases and fats and oils from entering the storm drains. So PPRC, and this is directly from the Western States Alliance, has a great video on how to train restaurants on cleaning up spills around your grease bins, how to not only clean up those spills, how to transfer grease properly, different best practices to use. So I've linked the video and that resource here. So after you attend, hopefully we're sharing the slides. We can send that to you. But really, it's just having that spill response plan and having a spill kit ready to use and making sure your employees know how to use it. That's the first step. Again, back to having those spill kits ready and having that training available. And if you have the spills on the pavement, what do? Here's the photo that I was referring to. It's called a wattle that you can put around the storm drain to keep that material from entering the storm drain, or those hazardous materials. And then you always use an absorbent material as a barrier to make sure, usually granules or something granulated, to make sure that that pollutant doesn't enter the storm drain. And following your instructions on your spill kit is the best route. Do not use water to clean up hazardous material spills or grease or fats or oils. That is only going to create more water or liquid that can then potentially go through the absorbent materials, go through the wattle if you have one there, and potentially enter the storm drain. Usually it's recommended that you scrub the area to collect the oil-soaked absorbent, and then collect the oil-soaked absorbed materials, and then dispose of them in the trash or according to your local regulations. So we've talked to businesses a lot that have these sorts of issues, say, are you doing anything to train your employees on how to actually dispose of your used cooking oil and grease? If you don't, here's a great video that you can use in staff training. Here's some good materials that could be helpful to help you reduce spills and clean up spills when they happen. So there's also some neat technology where restaurants can actually install systems indoors to store used oil and then have a connection that businesses, their grease or oil hauling company can use to collect that material. So again, making sure that you have that spill response plan and having that spill kit ready to use and do that training that can really reduce this situation right here. And we often work with businesses, particularly our restaurants, with those things. For auto body and repair shops, checking UIC wells is really important. So underground injection control, there's a little injection well here that a lot of auto body shops have, and making sure that they know where those are located, making sure they understand where they discharge, if they discharge at all, and then if they're closed, making sure that they're not leaked or damaged, so that hazardous material like your gas, your brake fluid, your coolant, your used oil is not going into your groundwater and then harming these individuals and polluting our groundwater here. So underground injection wells is basically it's a holding tank, and there are so many P2 best management practices can even reduce pollutants from entering these types of systems. But if these systems exist, we're talking about stormwater today. Not all of these different practices inside of the buildings. There's tons of P2 best management practices that reduces even the amount of things that are entering those injection, those UIC wells. But that is something to talk to your auto body shops about. What is happening with those materials? Is it safely stored, and is it affecting groundwater? Because we don't want that. Car wash facilities, and this is my final, pollution reducing slide, particularly here. Car wash facilities, we recommend that folks look into biodegradable salts or soaps and chemicals that instead of solvents. So, if car washes are pretty good in terms of capturing that water, making sure that it is either going into the wastewater system or mostly being filtered before it goes into the wastewater system. So in Illinois, car washes have to have a discharge to sewer systems or holding tanks. Sometimes they're required to have water softeners or filtration to lower the total suspended solids in the water, because those total suspended solids transfer through the wastewater system, and then the wastewater treatment system has to deal with that. So sometimes filtration can lower the amount of solids entering the sewer system. And even those water softeners or filtration can reduce spotting as well, which requires less detergent. So filtering solids, usually your car washes, it either needs to be, they do filter it, most do, that needs to be either disposed by drying or sending it to a landfill or through a specialized waste disposal company. So, you know, when I talk about washing cars at businesses, this is a really good and important best practice to say, you know, if you can, take it to a commercial car wash because they capture a lot of these different sorts of materials and items, and make sure they don't go into the storm drain. We also, so for car washes specifically though, biodegradable soaps and chemicals instead of solvents are really good best practice, so it doesn't enter into our wastewater plants or go into our stormwater drains. Using detergents, reducing detergent by using those with less suds or more pressurized water is a great best practices, and then that filtration. So there's all sorts of different technologies for filtration. There's filters, there's oil water separators, there's different reclamation systems. There's lots of technologies out there. So car washes, again, are a really important part of reducing stormwater pollution. But I would be remiss to be on this webinar without talking briefly about sewer system pollution. So we've been talking a lot about stormwater pollution, but also, you know, don't forget about sewer systems as well. Anything that you send down the drain impacts what kind of treatment is needed at the wastewater facility. Here in Illinois, our plants are becoming more, are facing more regulation because of the amount of nitrogen-based items and phosphorus-based items. We're also looking at microplastics as well. But more regulations around nitrogen and phosphorus removal are needed because of what's going down the drain. So even in your businesses, and if this is another webinar that we want to have to talk about those types of systems, let's go for it. But make sure that you have proper hazardous waste disposal and cleanup. Those cleanup and spill kits are really essential, so even those pollutants aren't entering the sewer system. Fats, oils, and grease going down the drain also impact local wastewater facilities, and they have to do extra treatment for those types of things. And don't forget, don't flush your medicines down the toilet or down the drain. Properly dispose of them and PFAS containing items properly. So this is a graphic from for fats, oils, and grease from the Pollution Prevention Resource Center and Western States Alliance. This is a great graphic to include in reports or send to your businesses about what to do around fats, oils, and grease and what not to do. And they have some wonderful training as well as technical resource library that has case studies about impacts at local wastewater facilities, different sorts of guides and booklets that can help you work with your restaurants or your businesses with fats, oils, and grease. And here are just some great best practices. We talk a lot about scraping or dry wiping excess food from grease into cookware and placing it in the trash, and then regularly maintaining and cleaning their grease traps and regularly cleaning their exhaust filters and hoods. That's just a good health code practice, that second measure, this measure here. That's just good for healthy kitchens, but it also really helps reduce fats, oils, and grease in sewer systems. So again, check out the Western States Alliance. They have amazing resources that we reference all the time on this. And if you are like, man, my head is spinning, this is so much information, there is a network of green business programs that can help. So if you have any best practices or that you'd like to share, or different sorts of pollution prevention or stormwater pollution prevention programs that you'd like to start with your businesses, the Green Business Engagement National Network is a consortium of 30 green business programs across 16 states, and we're here to help. So tap us. Work with us, reach out to us, anyone on the webinar, but also feel free to reach out to our national network of green business programs that are doing this on a regular basis and can provide some really great case examples of how you can adapt these best practices for your business engagements. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I think we're going into questions now, but I appreciate your time and I hope you took some best practices away today. Thanks.
Thank you, Cassie, and thank you, Julianne. Both great presentations, a lot of really good information, tips. So appreciate your all's time and putting together such great resources. So now we'll head into the panel session. And I'd like to ask Cassie and Julianne to put their video up. So appreciate you all for doing that. And they are real live people, you can see. So I do want to say we did get a couple of links provided, resource links that were shared. And if everyone would check the chat, you'll see that there's a link to the Orange County Stormwater Pollution Prevention site, and then a link to the same sustainable pool construction and maintenance. So we appreciate those links being shared and hope that you'll find those to be good resources. So let me start with the first question. And this can be either one of you or both of you. What are the practices you see businesses doing the most to protect stormwater?
Oops.
I'm talking and not unmuted. The biggest big practices that I see are reducing fertilizer, pesticide use, and really that fats, oils, and grease at the at those bins and this dumpster maintenance. Those are the three major ways that I see businesses taking care of their properties. Also, making sure that they're collecting waste that customers drop or that blows into their area. That's kind of the easy route, but making sure that they are reducing those fertilizers and pesticides and cleaning up their dumpster areas are the best practices. And I think, to them, it's not only a cost savings in some aspects, but it's also a way to keep their businesses prettier, cleaner, and more appealing for their customers too.
One thing I might add to that is we find a lot of restaurants where, when we first initially start working with them, where they've been hosing their mats down outside. So those big mats that are in the kitchen, they get pretty greasy and yucky. And, until you let them know that that's not a good idea, they'll often just take them out back and hose them down right next to the storm drain. So all that grease and soapy water goes in there. And so we tell them to, almost everybody has a mop sink. And so we say, yeah, just throw them in the mop sink and put them and hose them off there. Or have a service where they sort of swap them out. Sometimes people do go that route too.
Okay. Regarding the BMP on only applying pesticides after sunset, why is that?
Sometimes the direct sunlight and heat can degrade the chemical. So then you're just, it's not useful, right? You're not doing anything. Sometimes it can burn the plant. And a lot of, if you read the label on a lot of the chemicals, it says either extreme cold or heat, and they give some, ranges to avoid doing that. And then, of course, when it's raining, so because then it'll just get washed right into the storm drain. So those are kind of the weather things to look out for. But the heat, sometimes direct sunlight can interact with the chemical negatively.
Thank you. Do you have a link where we can look into more info on that to talk with our landscapers within our program?
Let me get back to you. Maybe Cassie does. I don't know. The IPM contractors that I found were all kind of just in California in one certain area. And I knew this was a national one, so I didn't want to provide that link, but I can certainly look into that and provide that information. Maybe I can find a good source.
Yeah, I don't have any resources to add on that one, Julianne. So if you could help with that, that would be wonderful.
Okay, so we have the email of the person who asked the question, and we can put you in contact with that person, and you can find the information and share with them.
That'd be great.
Okay. Have you worked with any local wastewater or watershed organizations in the past when interfacing with businesses?
We have. We work with some of our local wastewater facilities sometimes for our larger businesses because we want to make sure that sometimes actually in the Chicagoland area, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District actually has technical support to help businesses, some businesses with stormwater or wastewater pollution recommendations. So there are some, at least in Illinois, that's a bigger, it's a multi-plant network. So for the Chicagoland area. So they have a little bit more support services, but sometimes we will work with our local wastewater authority to ask, hey, we're seeing that this business is doing XYZ. How does this impact or affect your plant? Here at our work at CDAC, we also assess water and wastewater treatment plants. So we have good connections with that network and regularly talk to them about, or talk to them with, bring them any questions that we might have.
We do that too with inspections at certain types of businesses, mostly the kind that that Cassie just mentioned. Will have a checklist and it covers both wastewater and stormwater stuff. So, for example, with the restaurants, they would cover the fats, oils, and grease, and then you know, things like not hosing the mats off outside and things like that. So it's one checklist, really kind of makes sense. And that's, I'm sure, why Cassie included some mention of fog in her presentation, even though we're mainly focused on stormwater today, is that there's certain things you don't want to have go down either of those drains. So, so it makes sense to kind of lump them together when you're doing outreach to businesses. And then we work with a watershed group to do our outreach, a lot of and public involvement stuff. So just to get people kind of into, which is a big part of, there's a piece of the NPDES permit that requires both public outreach and public involvement, and tapping those local watershed groups, environmental groups and stuff is a really great way to get that involvement.
Okay. How do you effectively measure and monitor pollutants such as sewage, sediment, and chemicals in stormwater to see if the approaches are being effective?
Well, annually, part of the permit requires that you sample the outfalls in dry weather here in California. That's the way it's written. So here it only rains for 6 months out of the year. So if there's an outfall that's flowing in dry weather, like in September, then then that's got to be a human cause thing, somebody over irrigating or pouring something somewhere into the storm drain. And so we're required to sample that for certain parameters to see how we're doing. And those are, you know, sort of like the pH, obviously, and sediment, things like that, just to see how well we're doing. And then if it's above the limit that's allowed, then you have to take action and try and find where that water's coming from, and work with people to keep it from flowing in dry weather. So that's one way we do it. And then we have a regular monitoring program to also check. It's monthly. A couple of sites get sampled, and then we include that in our annual report, which is required because we have what's called a total maximum daily load limit on a couple of our streams in the area. And that's for sediment and pathogens. And so we have to monitor those and see how that's going and try and do what we can in terms of BMPs to limit the urban contributions to those pollutants.
All right. Pressure washing at gas stations. How do you advise businesses in that regard? Is there no environmental concern to directing pressure wash water to landscaping?
Do you mean car washes at gas stations? I'm assuming. You know, we talked about some of the best practices with gas stations. We, again, similarly, really make sure if they have storm drains on their site that they are making sure that they put those wattles around their storm drains to reduce the amount of that wash water entering the storm drains. And there is environmental concern for directing pressure wash water into landscaping. I mean, there's a lot of chemicals that you pick up on the street. I mean, there's the soaps. That's why we try to recommend biodegradable soaps to make sure that that is something that they're using that can go into the environment. But there's oils and all sorts of things on those wash water landscaping. So the best practices are to make sure that it's in an enclosed car wash facility that has those filtration systems and different sorts of ways to capture those pollutants and sort them out. Or depending on the wastewater system that in the area, it all depends if they can take those sorts of items and treat them at those wastewater facilities if there isn't filtration of that water before it gets sent to the sanitary system.
And sometimes if there's no landscaping to direct to, they need to collect the water. So they would cover if we're talking about maybe a gas station that wants to clean their surface air, their ports sometimes, then they would have to cover the storm drain and collect the water actually with a wetback and put it in a barrel. So,
Okay,
but
very good. Are there regulations that require trash compactors to be connected to the sanitary sewer?
In Illinois, there are some regulations governing trash dumpsters near sewer systems and also storm drains. So yes, some of the bigger systems, there is regulation, particularly in Illinois, around those, around trash compactors. Depends on the size of the trash compactor, location, volume, etc. But yes, there are some different types of codes. It can be local code, it can be state code. It's usually their local code or county code that has some of those types of regulations in them.
Okay. EPA recommends discharging chlorinated pool water to sanitary sewer or dechlorinating pool water and discharging to storm drain inlet. Is that consistent with your recommendations?
Yeah. It's just that I would just note a couple things from my slides here really quickly, and I'm just pulling it up. That you still, even if you discharge into the sanitary sewer, it has to be, you want to make sure to allow the chlorine levels to neutralize before discharging it into the sewer system. And the dechlorination of pool water and discharging it in the storm drain, that's regional dependent, I think, but and you should check like state or local regulations on that. But the dechlorination could be an option as well. That's where using those algicides in the pool, making sure they're not copper or silver based. And especially if you're putting it directly into the storm drain inlet, that could be a big concern. So I always advise businesses to dechlorinate and go into the sanitary sewer. So at least those different sorts of things can be captured by your wastewater treatment system.
And our wastewater treatment system completely prohibits bromine, discharge of bromine water.
Which is
It's
salt
really,
water.
yeah, the salts really mess up their treatment.
Yeah, so again, check your local regulations and ask your local wastewater provider, as well as your municipality or county about what your regulations might be.
Okay, very good. So we had another resource link come in, and I was wondering, Joe, if you could go in and copy that and put that in the chat for everyone, and we'll see if he can get that done. It's come from the Washington State Ecology. They have a business pollution prevention assistance program, and the person on the webinar works for the city of Kirkland, and they have a contract with Ecology to visit businesses in their jurisdiction, providing education and technical assistance. And Joe just posted that.
That's great. It looks like a lot of sort of the best management practices for stormwater protection that we talked about today. I'm glad that those programs exist, and it looks like a great model that a lot of folks can build upon for their own communities. Thank you for sharing that.
So we have a question. Is anything being done to capture or prevent 6 PPD?
I don't have an answer for that one. Do you, Cassie?
No, I don't. I'd have to do some research to look into that one a little bit more.
Okay, so that's going to bring us to the end of our questions and the end of the session. Laura, if you could bring up the final slide, thank you. So I want to thank Cassie and Julianne and Donna for joining us today. It's been really nice having you share your expertise and information. And thank you to those who submitted questions and the resource links. Hopefully everyone got a chance to learn some information they're going to be able to take back to their workplace. So as we wrap up, just mention to nominate a deserving entity for the MVP2 awards for those that are MPPR members. Participate in upcoming professional development webinars and work group meetings. For anyone on here who's not a member of MPPR, we'd love to have you join to take advantage of network opportunities and other professional development webinars. Join us at www.p2.org. And finally, we have a post-webinar survey we would love to have you fill out, and hopefully you got some good information. And thank you for joining us. Have a good rest of the day.